Episode 9 of the Who Am I podcast. I'm Dom. That's Brady.
Hey, that's Dom. I'm Brady.
And still don't have a name for this guy, but this is Brady's brain.
It's the Wacky Monkey. Did you know it says Wacky Monkey?
Yeah, that's like his title, but we need like a specific
Wacky.
It's Brady's brain.
We could call it Rocky after my dog.
No, but your dog definitely has that same brain. I don't know if you are like Rocky or if Rocky is like you. I can't tell.
Well,
I can't tell who came first.
So Rocky is my dog, and he's probably a year and a half right now. So I'm roughly a little over 27 years older than Rocky. So given your question, Dom, I think I came before Rocky. So Rocky has, he rubs off on me.
Thank you for the clarification.
Oh, wait, no, I rub off on him. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Good start.
Brady, how are you today, dude?
Good.
Good. You want to pray for us?
Sure. Okay. God, that was an exciting intro. Had some great Brandon Lake music there. I'm so excited for this episode today. I feel like you're putting a lot of things on me and Dom's heart and mind, and a lot of passion behind certain beliefs. And yeah, just pray that you can guide those beliefs with grace today, with love, and just anyone listening, if anything we say today comes off as harsh, or it doesn't feel like it's from God, test it, question it. We're imperfect, and we're never going to have it all together. We're never going to be perfect. But we are trying to be more like Jesus every day. And, God knows our heart. And God, thank you for this podcast. We're just every day hearing about new people listening. Some people that don't even really associate with religion or with faith are listening. And that's all because of you, God. And, let us just be a vessel. Let us just point to you. It's not about me. It's not about Dom. Give us the words today. Give us the lessons. And let it be of your heart, your character. And we're very blessed to be in this position, to have this opportunity. And I pray that you can help us steward this opportunity well. We say all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Do a little
And action.
We got the monkey mascot. Okay. This is gonna be a good one. I'm telling y'all, I've been
Brady's been stewing today. We had a great conversation earlier after a Bible study this morning, and I'm excited to hear some of the things on your heart. Where do you want to start?
Let's just jump right into it. How about it?
Give us some context and then throw it at us.
Okay, we're going to open up to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23. Still turning. Y'all can do this at home too, We can do this together here. Let's see, 23.
I'll jump there. I'll jump there with you.
Yeah, jump. Hold on a sec. Yeah, chapter 23. And we're going to go through verses 1 through 12 here. So I'll give some context before we get started here. I think on the outside, we view love, I think it was last episode we were talking about how people have such a confined perspective on emotion, like crying, let's say. And were you trying to be quiet about that? That was really quiet. That was good. And so people have a confined perspective when it comes to emotions. I think we'll put Jesus in a box when it comes to love. And we'll say, oh, Jesus is just love, man. Kind of like almost like a hippie perspective. And I think love can mean lots of different things. At times, love can be showing someone grace. At times, love can be telling someone some truth. Maybe the whole world is giving them grace and they need someone to just tell it to them straight. And there's one group that Jesus consistently he gives them truth. And I could be totally wrong on this, but I think he does that because they have so much pride in their hearts. They're not humble. They think they know everything. And yeah, this is the Pharisees, the Jewish religious leaders at the time. And yeah, I think that's decent context. Should I just jump in? Yeah. All right. Chapter 23, 7, and I'm reading out of the ESV Bible, if anyone's wondering. Okay. 7 woes to the scribes and Pharisees. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do. For they preach, but do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their, oh boy, I don't know this word, phylacteries broad and their fringes long, and they love the place of honor at feasts and the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by others. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Neither be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ. The greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. What do you think about that, Dom? What comes to mind for you when I read that?
I absolutely love it. I don't want to steal any of your thunder, so I'll try to. I kind of already know a little bit along the lines of what Brady's going to say, and so I don't want to take any of that from him. But one thing that really I've been paying more attention to, I've read through the Gospels a few times, and as I'm reading it now, is whoever humbles himself. And I do think God can't humble people, but I also think that there's also a portion of me, and I I don't want to bring like worldly things into this, but like Socratic irony. I love that idea of like
Can you
admitting,
explain that?
yeah, almost like admitting that I know nothing is the start to wisdom.
Right. Okay.
And so when it comes to like humility, I think along the same lines of my pride will always tell me that I'm humble. Like my pride will always be like, dude, you are so humble. You are so awesome. And so it's almost like I want to turn that off, and I want to look at myself as the most prideful person, because no matter what degree, I can't judge my own humility. Like I can't, because my pride will always tell me that I am humble enough. And so I want to approach that almost with like a Socratic irony type of mindset, in terms of I am the least humble person, and I want to be more humble. And that's how I want to carry out my entire life. Is there is always more humility, and my pride will tell me that I am humble, but I want to continue to be more and more humble, regardless of where on the pride to humility spectrum I fall. I still want to go more towards the humble side, always. And so one thing that has really stuck out to me as I'm reading through the Gospels right now is just humbling yourself. And then I think God can come in and do a work and show you how to grow where he wants you to grow. But I think a lot of it is recognizing that I can be more humble.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I love that you said that, because, at this time, he was just talking to the Pharisees, and, I think where my mind goes is religious leaders. So I read this text today and I think about our religious leaders, but we're all called to die to ourselves every single day, and deny yourself, and choose Jesus every day. And that's the same for all of us, no matter if you have a title behind your name or not. But yeah, I couldn't help like reading this, and I think it's verse 7. Having the best seat in the house, the best seat in the church, being greeted in the marketplace, being greeted by all the congregation, being called pastor by others. It's these titles can become we
Idol.
talk about pride. Yeah, an idol, where like you are so proud to be in this position, and all of a sudden there is some type of like a pedestal that maybe you are on, and here he's literally saying like you're not to be called rabbi. There's one teacher, there is one instructor, and the greatest among you shall be your servant. It makes me think, are the pastors in the churches I go to, are they the servant? And that's that I'm including myself in that. Am I a servant as well? I'm not going to just ask a leader to do that, but I think it's something we all have to ask ourselves. And the person up on the stage who is representing God needs to set the tone, needs to, we talk about it like, even with Jesus, his ministry was lots of parables, but he put it into practice. He didn't just say things. He gave sight to the blind. He let the lame walk again. He brought people back from the dead.
Washed feet.
He washed feet. He rode in on a donkey. Like he didn't just say be humble. He showed us humility. He didn't just say care for the poor. Like, he doesn't just say the greatest among you shall be your servant. Like you said, he washed feet. And even if it was uncomfortable for them, for the disciples in the room that are like, Master, why are you doing this? Like, and so I guess, I don't know, it just really convicted me of like, at the minimum, the person leading a church, a pastor or pastors, they need to be that example of Jesus. And if I'm questioning it, I should know. I should know if during a church service, if a homeless man comes into the congregation and starts blurting out obscenities, like, what is my pastor going to do? I can't tell you with a straight face that I know that he would treat that person with love and grace.
Or she.
He or she, yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know. I've just been, I watched a video recently. It's, I'll try and find the name for y'all, because it was such a powerful video. And I told you this, it's probably gonna be the pastor's like greatest sermon he could ever preach. And that actually happened. This homeless man comes in, and he's using a lot of profanity, but he's sharing his testimony, and the pastor literally stops the service, stops what his whole sermon was. He has the flexibility, like Jesus stopping for the woman that had the blood disease of 12 years, like being able to stop and tend to the sheep. And that's what this man did. And I don't know, it just convicted me. And then I was reading this today, and I truly think, like, right now, the reason I gravitate to certain pastors and certain leaders is they hate their sin, but they are not afraid to put their sin on the table and say, this is what I did, this is what I struggle with, and I am always going to keep it 100 with you guys. And I don't see that in a lot of our church leaders today. And yeah, it's unfortunate because sometimes I think on the outside, it's easy to look at a congregation and attack maybe church goers in a congregation. And I'm one to talk, right? Like I literally used to get blacked out on University of Arizona campus, do coke, and then the next day walk into church and act like a good little Catholic boy. Like, I'm one to talk, but I've lived that. And I think when you see a lot of Christians that are half in, half out, it's because you have pastors on the stage who are not being straight up with them about this walk, and saying, like, look, this is, you're either in or you're out. And I would much rather have a pastor be up there that does a whole sermon about something they're struggling with, as opposed to acting like they have it all together. And I don't know. Now I'm just rambling.
No, I love what you're saying. I think definitely the most important when it comes to this topic, the most important thing that I want to be aware of is um, like I want to check my own eyes first, always, before I want to call someone else higher or explain maybe what God says about a certain action or word that they're saying. I want to look in my own eyes. I want to make sure that there's not a plank sticking out of my eyes before I
Mm-hmm.
call someone else's speck out. Uh, and I think that that is where my own humility, I still want to improve that and get better about that, addressing my own speck and also understanding that whether you're a pastor or a member of the congregation or someone outside of the church, we are all flawed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like my sin is no worse than your sin, and your sin is no worse than mine. Um, However, it does make me think. Our friend Josh sent you and I a passage this week, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and
I was
uh,
actually gonna ask you to read that one today.
um,
Yeah.
so let me flip there. Half my Bible's falling
Can
out.
can I really quickly just share what that pastor's name was in the video in case someone
Yeah,
wants to
yeah.
watch it? So the pastor's name was Ed Newton of Community Bible Church in San Antonio, Texas. Um, you could search it online. Homeless man stops pastor mid sermon, then something powerful happens. I'm not going to give it all. I mean, just check out the video if you're interested. But um, to be very brief about it, this homeless man was literally about to take his own life that day that a churchgoer at this church decided to stop, see how he was doing, and he just mentioned how he went to church that day. And then this homeless man is like, "Can I go to church with you?" He goes to the church, interrupts the sermon, and then it's a beautiful testimony and how it just kind of. I mean, I was watching this and just like blown away because again, just like with what me and Dom do here, like if midway through this podcast we don't have any of this planned out and all of a sudden the spirit is telling Dom to share something, there's no script with this. He can stop and he can bring the spirit into a situation. And I think that's when God can do the biggest thing. So anyways, check out that video if you're interested. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Check the video out. But what you were speaking about, it really makes me think of this passage that Josh sent us this week, and we both just it's really cool. We got like a group chat where we have questions about the Bible. We'll send them to each other. I love to hear each other's perspectives. And so one that he sent us was 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and read the whole thing if you want context. But the particular verse that I want to talk about a little bit right now is chapter 5, verse 11. And I'm reading now the NIV. But it says, "But now I am writing you that you must not associate with anyone who calls himself a brother, but is sexually immoral or greedy or an idolater or a slanderer, a drunkard or a swindler. With such men do not even eat." And
Mm,
what I mean by what you were saying makes me think of that is just before Paul wrote that, he said, I'm not talking about like you cannot associate at all with people who sin because then you would have to like leave the world. And so what he's saying is someone who calls himself a brother. And one thing I've noticed about my Bible is it says brother, where other translations say brother and or sister. And so not just men, but a man or woman who calls themselves a Christian, but still chooses their sin over God. And Paul goes on to say, expel the wicked man from among you. That is verse 13. The second half of verse 13 is expel the wicked man from among you. And it makes me just think of how, like, the person's essentially lukewarm, which means you're out. You're in or you're out. And that lukewarmness there makes me think that you're out. And so I I don't want, Paul says before this, like, I don't want the little bit of yeast to spread throughout the entire dough, the dough being the congregation. And so expel the wicked from among you. And like we hold, you and I were talking about this, we hold pastors to that standard in terms of like, oh, if this DM that this pastor sent to this woman or whatever gets out, then like he's going to need to step down from his position. But like what Paul's saying is like, that's not just for the pastor. And I feel like almost the modern day church has been very lenient in terms of who can be in, and it's not saying kick them out of the church forever. It's not saying you can't struggle with sin. The issue is like, do I have a repentant heart towards my sin? Do I feel
Right.
do I feel guilt towards my sin? Like, am I showing up to church to learn more about God and the work that he wants to do in me that can make me more Christ-like and take me further away from that sin and closer to God? And like those people, we want them. It doesn't, like, we are all going to struggle with sin, but when I do sin, I want to feel guilt for that. I want to feel the hurt that I caused God with that sin. And like those people are welcome, but the one who hurts God and then does not feel any guilt or remorse or repentance towards that sin, like that's the one. Like, be a little worried about that. And I know even for me, like I was sinning and going to church and not thinking twice about my sin for so long. And
Well, okay, here's a question. If someone at that time called you out on what you were doing and said, like, you know, Dom, this, you know what we're teaching, and you're not doing this, and you're almost like proud, or you have no guilt of this, and they kicked you out, what would you think?
I think even if someone just said something to me about it, not you don't even necessarily have to kick me out.
That's what I
If
was
you made
thinking
me
too.
aware that you know that, hey, I did this thing last night on Saturday night and now I showed up to church on Sunday and I'm acting like I didn't, or like I don't care that I did that. If you like, when I was in that place, if you would have said something to me, it would have gone one of two ways. And I think both would have been beneficial for my relationship with God. One, my pride would have gotten in the way and I would not have returned to that church. That's option one, which essentially that would have been good. That would have been good because that church does not need my pride in it. And option two would have been, I would have felt convicted of the sin that I did. And my heart would have shifted and I would have longed to learn more about God and how I could grow in relationship with God and move further away from my sin. And so one of two things, either my pride gets in the way or God convicts my heart. If you would have said anything to me, just saying like, hey, I know you did that. Like, are you asking forgiveness for it or whatever? Like, that would have gone one of two ways. And both would have helped my spiritual walk.
Yeah, I think too, like, we were talking about this, but like a very unfortunate consequence of this could be someone is new to the faith and they just think this is kind of how you are supposed to walk out your faith, is like you're supposed to be proud of this sin that you're living in, and you're supposed to lie to people and just kind of put up this Instagram reel of how your life is. Um, and then they can think that's okay, that's Christianity. And like I Christianity is so trendy in the world right now. It's so popular. I think there's something like over fact check, but over I think 2 billion people in the world that align with say Christianity. And
I think, just to clarify, I think there's probably over 2 billion people who confess with their mouth that they're a Christian.
yes, yes. And
Now, believing in the heart is a different thing, but
right. And
I think that's the point you're going to make.
yeah, it's I just keep thinking about the book of Acts and how the early church was started. It it was not popular to be a Christian. You were most likely signing up to go to the cross yourself, literally, to to be martyred for your faith. Um, People died in gruesome, cruel ways, and there was no, you weren't going to be getting power, you weren't going to be getting money, you definitely weren't going to be getting sex. You um I just you okay, I'll put it this way, you weren't going to be doing it if you didn't fully believe in it. um and I think today you don't have to fully believe in it to call yourself a Christian, to be in the circles, to be in the churches, to wear the clothing, all this stuff. It's like, listen to the music. It's became so cultural, and um, I don't know. I feel like God feels some type of way about it.
Yeah, I I think that God would be very angry uh, if His name was getting misrepresented. I think that is what I sit with is uh, God knows the intentions, and even the intentions of a pastor, of a congregation member, like the reason for having the sermon, the reason for going to church, the reason for all of it, the intention behind it. Like God knows that. And yeah, I don't want to discourage anyone from going to church. And I think, however, I do not want to discourage anyone from going to church ever. But once you know about God, commit fully or don't commit. I think that for me, that is what I would rather have. I would rather have a church of 5 people who are chasing God with their entire heart than
Mm,
5,000
mm,
who are halfway in and halfway out.
yeah.
And yeah, I
I
will
think
leave it
in
at that.
yeah, I think in the 80s with the Jesus revolution, they would call people Jesus freaks, and like even that is closer to, I guess, how the book of Acts, the early church would be treated. you know I think I don't know, I could be totally off on this, but the vibe I get is that it's like cool, like cool Christianity, all the podcasts, all the events, all the uh not festivals, but they have like, you know passion conference and all that stuff, and it's it just seems very cool. And that's fine, but like, do you believe it? And and like, we believe there's going to be a judgment day, and you can fool all your friends, you could fool your pastor, you could fool your congregation, your family, but you're not going to fool God. Um and I know this too, and this is something that I'm daily like, God, like like eh, one thing I say when I worship is like, let my worship be authentic, because so much of the time I'm worshiping at a church in public and there's lots of people around, and there's lots of distractions, and like, I don't want to put my hands up in the air because everyone else has their hands up in the air. I want to worship, like, if God is telling me to get down on my knees, or if God is telling me to clap, if God's telling me to put my hands up in there, I want to do it if I feel like that's just for God. I don't want that to be for anyone else. Um yeah. Dom's got a good question, I can tell.
No, mine's more of a statement. We were talking a little bit about this morning, but one thing that I want to work on personally is still seeing the good. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is, whether your entire intention and motivation behind giving a sermon is to glorify God or to make money for your church, either or, I want to see the part that is in it to glorify God. I want to see that part of your heart, and I want to focus on that part. I don't want to focus on anything negative when you, because I know that that's how God's looking at you. God is looking at you as like this part, even like myself, like this part of me is Christ like, and let's do more of that. Let's focus on that, and
That's good.
let's make that bigger. And like, that's what I want the world to see. That's what I want congregation, people listen to the podcast, like my friends, I want them to see that part of me that is Christ like, and
Mm.
let's make that grow. And that that's how God looks at me. That's how he looks at a pastor. That's how he looks at congregation members. I think the intention behind Paul's words here in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 is almost like I said, if you would have kicked me out of the church when I was sinning and still showing up and saying that I believe, it would have been beneficial for me either way.
Mm.
Either I would have started to learn what repentance towards that sin looked like, or Paul said in here, like, give that man back to Satan. Like, if he is choosing evil over God, then let him go play in the streets.
Mm.
Like, let him pick that. And I think that would have been beneficial for me. I think the chaos that would have came from it, the lack of protection, the lack of community, of people who want to see the Christ-like parts of me grow. And so, like, for me, I think that's the intention here, is like, that is what's best for their soul.
Mm. Mm.
Not like kick them out and like stiff arm them and don't ever let them come back and like don't love them. That's not what he's saying by any means. What he's saying is like, that's what's best for their souls and your souls. Like, so that whatever it is, like for me, that pride isn't infecting everyone here at this church. And like, that's good, because then I can go in the world and see how my pride fits in there, and let Satan have his fun. Like,
Right, right.
and then like that will in turn push me closer to God, more so than sitting in a church and thinking that I got it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the place I was at. And I didn't, and I still don't. And yeah, and so I really want to personally focus on like seeing the gold in people, seeing the Jesus in people over picking out negatives. And but also there's a level of discernment that I want to have in knowing that like this person is a man, and in the same way, if you see something in me, I want you to call it out, and I want you to call me higher, and I want to grow, and I want to be more Christ-like. And so if you see a part of my heart that's not, like, make me aware of that.
Right, right.
And so like I also want to be discernful to know that, whether it's coming from a pastor or a church member or a friend or even someone outside of church. I think there are certain ways we can speak to those people as well. But yeah, I really want to focus on the Jesus that's in people. I think I
That's
can do a
good.
better job of that in my own life.
I can definitely as well. I remember when you and Josh sent me this passage this week. I got to the line of um, not even, Paul saying, don't even eat with such a person who's guilty of sexual immorality, greed, idolatry, drunkard, swindler, all that. And yeah, I think my first gut instinct, was thinking, well, I feel like Jesus would sit with anyone, and then you brought up the point that the disciples would come to Jesus um, with a repenting heart. So because of that, when they would leave Jesus, they truly were a new creation. They were changed. They does that mean that they didn't ever sin again? No. But they maybe before when they used to love to sin, now they hated it. And now they love others more, talking about like focusing on the positive. Maybe they focus more on the positive in their life. And I don't know, it just made me think of like the church in that way. If people are going into a church and and if a church is too big where you don't know if these people have a repentive like heart, then are they just going to stay the same people and they're proud of their sin for like years? It kind of we were talking earlier, like made me think of like a parent just sending your kid out of the house. It's like, as a kid, it's like, okay, this is, yeah, I gotta go out in the world on my own now. And your parent is not going to hold your hand the whole time. And I guess I wonder if that's happening a bit where, again, even us saying this, I have a hard time doing it. Like I have so much empathy for the church and church leaders. I really do. And it's I think we have such a beautiful opportunity to spread love and to spread Jesus to people. And I'm including myself in this. I don't want us to spread the wrong view of Jesus. And I think when we hold people's hands and at times don't give them truth when they need to hear truth, we are not showing the full representation of Jesus. Like, what was the thing you told me today about at one of his sermons, Jesus's sermons, like the aftermath after the sermon? What happened?
I don't remember.
About like who stayed and then who.
Oh, when Jesus was talking about eating my flesh and drinking my blood, that one.
Maybe that's an intense one. That's good.
Yeah, and I just think about like if I was there, and I heard some guy not knowing
Context and stuff.
the symbolism
Yeah.
of communion today. If I would not have known that, which they didn't at the time Jesus was saying this, and my leader says, eat my flesh and drink my blood, I'd be like, whoa. And after Jesus says that, it says that some of the people who had been following up to that point left. And like, can I blame them? Because like for me in my brain, like that's where I start to have questions. I'd be like, whoa, this guy's telling me to eat his flesh and drink his blood. I'd be like, that's a little strange. And so that would be like an all in or an all out moment for me. If I was physically in the presence of Jesus and I heard him say that, just with the context of that. And yeah, that's there's a lot of things that he said that I don't want to say it pushed people away, but it was like, you're either all in or you're all out. And like, you make that decision. And yeah.
One thing he definitely did not do was hold back out of fear that the people listening would not agree with what he said.
Yeah. And I think the water that we are treading in right now is very tender water. And I think like what you're saying is could make some people angry. One thing that came to my mind when you were talking was talking about truth and grace and like almost like a parent. I want to offer truth, but only truth that like comes from God. God is truth. And so like I want to offer that. And in the same way, the grace that I offer is like I want to offer like I can only offer what God has shown me, the grace that God has shown me. And like the truth and the grace that God offers is what I want to demonstrate, what I want to lead people towards. And like once I start acting out of my own Dom levels of grace and Dom truths, like, am I even helping anybody at that point? Like, I mean, there's certain worldly things like maybe how to hit a baseball, like, but in terms of like things that last forever, like your soul, like I can only offer you what God has offered me. You know, like I can only extend the grace that God has extended me, and like the truth and the grace that like I have received and been shown. That's all that I can offer. And I don't want to start trying to make up my own levels of grace and my own levels of truth. And so I think one question that I have as we talk about this is like when reading through things like Matthew 23, like at what point did Jesus put his foot down and say, okay, I've showed you the grace side and now it's time for truth? Does that make sense? In terms of like, here's a little tough love, literally, like it is truth, but like shown in love. Like the ultimate destination of Jesus sharing that truth is love. And for some people, like if I deliver a message with so much grace, it's almost enabling. And if I deliver a message with so much truth, it can be hurtful. And what Jesus did was he did a perfect job of knowing the audience or the person that he's talking to and having the right amount of grace and the right amount of truth. And so I'm not Jesus and I won't ever be Jesus, but I want to learn from him and I want to be able to empathize with people to a level where for your spirit to grow, I want to offer you this much godly truth and this much godly grace, not my own amount of grace because whatever, because you've been kind to me in the past or whatever it is. No, like out of love for your spirit, which is going to last forever, I want to offer this much grace and this much truth. And I think it varies like with
Mm.
circumstances and with people. There's certain people who like similar to the Pharisees, like have a high level of pride and maybe you need more truth. And then there's certain people who feel inadequate and maybe you need a little more grace. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think like Jesus just did a beautiful job of that. And I think it can be so hard, especially as like a if you're talking to a lot of people, you're gonna have both. And so I think it can be very hard to address both. But what I don't want to do is just say something that makes everyone comfortable. There's no growth. We talked about in a few episodes ago, like if I'm comfortable, then I'm going to stay right here. And at least for me in my short existence on this earth, I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to grow closer to God, be more Christ-like. And if I'm comfortable, that's not happening. And so I want to deliver a message that makes some people feel uncomfortable, that challenges some people. And but I also want to be truthful and open about like, dude, I'm flawed. Like I'm flawed
Right, right.
and like I would not have grown at all. I wouldn't have grown to the place that I'm at today, and I would not continue growing if no one ever challenged me.
Mm,
And so
mm.
like I want to get to a place where I receive that challenge and I receive it well. Like call me higher, call me out on
Yeah,
things that like I
yeah.
I suck at because like I want to grow. I want to grow, and that's the only way that it happens is through uncomfortability and through like really, and I think this is more of a society issue is like hard conversations. Like
Mm.
we as humans are so passive now that like we can't have a hard conversation saying like, hey, you did this thing and you know better than to do that thing. And like it is uncomfy. It's uncomfy for me to bring it to you and it's uncomfy for you to hear it.
We just said uncomfy on the potty.
But
That's
like
good.
how first off I grow in bringing that to whoever and they grow in me challenging them in that way. And but then in the delivery of it, I want to deliver with the right amount of grace and the right amount of truth in a way that Jesus would, so that it is received by your heart and not seen as like a intentional hurtful thing, but also not so graceful that you continue doing that thing that you know is wrong. And so I think there's a fine line there.
I think I saw this like in a movie or a show, but I'm big. Maybe this is why I love Jesus so much. Like I'm big into the parables, the analogies, the stories. Um, there's a guy in this movie or story that he gets handicapped. He was some type of athlete. He gets handicapped, and in his recovery, his wife, as he's learning to walk again and do certain things, if his wife, he asks his wife, "Hey, can you go get me this from the kitchen, or can you go do this? Can you go do that?" And I remember watching it. It was really hard for her. Her instinct was to go and help him and do it, but she knew if the more she just made him comfortable in that recovery, the longer it was actually going to take for him to recover. So it was a sense of enabling him by just doing everything for him, as opposed to, you know, uh, I don't know what his name was, but let's just say Joey. Joey, like you can go into the kitchen and get that for yourself. And I think it was really hard for her in this movie or story. And yeah, I think like tough love, it's in the name. There's soft love, there's tough love, there's all types of love. Sacrificial love, I think, is is what we believe in. And I mean that's our, our instructor, our rabbi, our number one instructor and pastor, Jesus. You know, he was up on the cross, and we are called to die on the cross, to deny ourselves and take up our cross daily. And literally, by trusting Jesus, go into the depths of hell, go into the depths of darkness, and rise higher. Like, he's shown us the way. And like, yeah, it is very uncomfortable. And to have these conversations, to have a tough conversation with your friend, a family member, someone that doesn't agree with you on something that's a little touchy, whether it's politics, religion, whatever it is. And yeah, to enter that, like you're saying, to almost guesstimate going into it, like, okay, is this a situation I need more grace in? Is this a situation that calls for more truth? Um, I was just thinking, like, we've had some tough conversations, and I think that without that, I do believe our relationship would be a lot weaker.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna say this. Uh,
Are you gonna tell me something uncomfortable? Uh-oh. No, I'm
I'm
joking.
gonna
Go
say
for it.
something that might make a lot of people uncomfortable.
Okay.
Um,
Oh boy, and we're going to commercial break now.
I think delivering a message that challenges people or makes them uncomfortable uh, will cause people to leave. Some people. I think some people will, whether it's a podcast or a sermon or even just a conversation with friends, if I say something that makes someone feel uncomfortable. And this is why I want to be so intentional with my words always. If I say something that's uncomfortable yet true and someone leaves, I'm not sorry. Like I am not apologizing for sharing truth. And one thing in today's world is like we want people to stay, whether it's the church, whether it's a friend group, whether it's a podcast people listening to,
Mm.
like we want people to stay. And then my question becomes, what's the intention? And so what I mean by that is like I want to challenge people with this podcast, but like I also want to be challenged too. And
Mm.
I can't expect everyone to have the same heart as me. Like I don't want people to listen to this just to feel good. Hopefully something that I say, something that Brady says can help a listener grow, can help me grow, can help you grow. And if that happens, like good. I want to glorify God's name with my words here. Same thing with the church. If a pastor says something uncomfortable and it causes someone to not come back to church, was what the pastor said true?
Ooh.
If it was, if it was,
That's good.
then let that person leave. And what's the intention? Because if I say something that makes you comfortable and you stay, and I compromise the truth,
You're bending the truth, yeah.
and so like it. Is my intention to fill the seats, or is my intention to share the truth and the grace of God with people? And
It's a word.
and same thing with friends. Like if I say something to a friend that challenges them but is true, like if they excommunicate me, I'm not sorry. But like if I compromise that truth so that you stay, like what is it that I'm looking for in you? What am I looking for? Affirmation from you? Am I looking for compliments from you? Am I looking for you to do something for me in my life? Like, is it a transactional relationship? I think that's the
Mm,
moral of this point. Like, is it a transactional relationship, or is it like love without expectation? Like I
mm,
do not
mm.
expect anything from you. And like I just want to love you unconditionally. And like
How do you do that? How do you enter into a relationship and love someone with no expectations?
I think that that is a great question. I think one thing that I've really, I mean, when it comes to friends, one thing that I really look for is you have done so much for me, whether it's financially or getting me food or podcasting, whatever it is. Like you've done so much for me, but I think you know that that does not matter to me.
Mm,
Like what
mm.
matters to me is like I want to grow closer to God with you. I know that you're going to
Mm.
help me do that, and I hope that I can help you do that. And
I love you, bro.
like I love you, and that's all that I want in a friend, and to grow closer
Sorry. Okay. Keep
to
going.
grow closer to God. Like that's my intention, and it's not transactional. Although like you do so much for me, and like I am incredibly grateful for that. You could do nothing for me, and we'd still be best friends. And like that's what I look for in a friend. That's if I was a pastor, what I would look for in a church community is like people who their only intention is to grow closer to God. Because like
Mm,
that
mm,
is mine. And like I said, like you have given me more than I deserve as a friend, as a person, like you have. And but like I don't expect that from you. And I don't ever want to expect that from you. And so it's just there's no transaction involved. Like although you do so many kind things and you're so generous all the time, that does not matter in terms of our
mm,
relationship. And
mm,
like I love you without expectation and without caring what you do for me.
mm, mm. Thank you.
But like if you didn't challenge me, like I wouldn't be growing closer to God. Does that make sense? And so
Yeah, yeah.
like I love the questions you ask me. I love like the hard conversations we've had. I love saying like, hey, you can grow here. Hey, you can grow there. Like I want to welcome that. And I want to have a heart that welcomes that. And like those are the people that like I also want around me. And
Yeah.
at least in my like very close circle is people who without expectation, like all they want to do is grow closer to God.
And I think it's like a level of care. Like I know if you're gonna tell me something difficult and have a tough conversation with me, I just know who you are, that you're not just going to jump into that. Like you are going to think that through. I know it won't be easy for you to do that. So I know if you're coming to me with something like that, at the minimum, at the very minimum, I need to fully open my ears and listen to what you're saying. And um, I respect it. And I like when it's Sunday and I'm watching a sermon, or any other day I'm watching one, if it's online, you know, I I it, I think Jesus at one point calls it the sword of the word. It's like this should hurt a little bit. Like that's how you grow. I think there's an example with a lobster where like I wrote about this in my book earlier this year, but um, something like a lobster throughout its life has to break its shell to make room for its next shell. And it keeps doing that. And it's the most painful, tough experience for the lobster. But if it doesn't do that, then it can't grow. What's so funny?
I just,
Was
just
I doing a funny hand
I was just
gesture?
thinking about a lobster. That's all.
Oh. By the way, I was just thinking about this. You were like, oh, I still remember I was recovering, I think, from my surgery still, maybe not. But you were like over there by the bathroom. And the first time you ever like really told me something that you were like thinking like, oh, this is a touchy thing to bring up. And I remember like your your face before you did it. You were like, you're a little nervous, but um I appreciated it, and you were right. You were right about what you said. And so I think, yeah, I think I look for that in relationships. Like I am 1,000,000% going to have a blind spot, and I need people close to me that are not afraid to point it out.
Yeah.
If I have, some crumbs on my mustache or something, like, dude, you got food in your mustache. Like, it's no different with my sin. Like, I want you to point that out.
Yeah. And I think another important characteristic is like, I don't ever want to act like I'm perfect. If I'm challenging you in a way, like I have my own blind spots and I have my own shortcomings. And like, I don't want to give you truth and act like I'm perfect over here, because I'm not. One thing when you were talking is, and this is what I meant when I said, like, that's why I want to be so intentional with my words. It's easy, especially in the world that we live in, for my opinions to flood the truth and almost like water down the truth or take priority over the truth. And so whether offering advice or not, or just sharing or stating something, even like here, I want to be very careful even when I speak about my opinions.
Mm,
The truth I don't want to hold back from.
mm.
And that's
Oh, to know the difference. Like, is this truth? Is this an opinion? Is this just a quick thought?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because even in the situation that you're talking about, when I was standing over there next to the bathroom, like I had opinions. I had plenty of opinions, but my opinions don't do you any good. But if I can like discern that this is where your heart is and this is where God wants it to be, and if I say something, it can show you that. Like, that's true. That's true. And so I want to take my opinions out of it and just to offer you this other perspective. And I could go on and on about my opinions, but they don't matter. They don't matter, and
Mm,
you're not asking
mm,
for them.
mm,
And in fact, I think that's when a lot of hurt, and you can be overly truthful or overly graceful when my opinions like get thrown into the mix. And I think even talking about this, and I don't know, I might have to think about this one for a while, but like if I'm only speaking truth, there is the right amount of grace involved in it.
mm,
I don't know. I'll think about that, but as I sit with it, if it's truth with my opinions in it, then the level of truth and level of grace can get thrown into whack.
so just to fully understand what you're saying, are you saying like your truth is something that you've learned from God's word, and then opinions is kind of like maybe, I don't know, off a whim, just something that maybe you heard someone else say, or is that, I guess, how would you define your opinions?
That's a good question. I think it leads me into, and these are probably going to be my opinions that I'm going to share, maybe just my perspective, maybe both. To me, I want my opinions to align with God's truth. And I think that that will be a journey that I'm working on the rest of my life. However, it makes me think of, like, we talk about mind and body versus heart and soul, or heart and spirit. And I think the mind has desires,
Mm,
earthly desires. And I think the heart also has desires. And in the same way, I think the body feels things and the soul feels things.
mm,
And so I want my heart and my soul to be in line with God's. And I want that to take priority over my mind and body, my flesh.
mm,
And so I think when I think opinions, I think of my mind. I think of things on this earth that my mind wants. And that's not the same as what my heart wants. My mind wants $5 million. My mind wants the new job, the new house, the new car, the new girl, whatever. It's what my mind wants. But my heart like longs for peace. My heart
mm,
like longs for love, for forgiveness, for grace, for truth. And I think that's where the shift is for me, is like I want to turn my mind off. And if my heart is in line with God's, which again, that will also be a lifetime of being more like God in heart. But I want to offer that. And that is truth. If my heart is aligned with God's, and it will bring someone else or myself peace, love, joy, fruits of the spirit. We say that a lot on here. Then I believe it's true.
mm. That's
But
good.
but if it's just my thoughts, it doesn't mean that they're invalid. If I'm using my mind, my brain, like my fleshly brain to say something. But like in terms of like a baseball swing, again, like if I tell you like your hips are opening up too soon, and like let your hands go first, like when this life is over, does that matter? Like I don't, it doesn't. But what my heart wants to do is, like, as I'm giving you hitting lessons, like I want to learn about your soul. I want to learn, and like,
Mm,
dude, that's where
mm,
like real relationship is built. And like, yeah, I want to help you with your earthly things too, but I also want to talk to you about how, in the grand scheme of things, like when this existence is over, they don't really matter.
yeah.
I don't know. That was probably a lot and probably very confusing,
No, that
but
was good.
my opinions, I want to filter through those and just offer truth as much as possible. That's the moral of that story.
That was really good. Made me think of a professor I had at U of A, and I think it was like a business class that we were in. Um, But I remember his last lecture was not anything really business related. It was just like, here are some things I've learned over the years that, you know, I want to pass on to you guys. And I don't know, it just felt very like you wouldn't do that, like it wasn't a part of his I guess like criteria to share this information with us. And so it really felt like he cared about it enough to tell us. And there are like little tips like get airline miles. And he shared a story about in college he came home to visit his parents, and he was in this cool stage and wanted to go out to a bar with his friends, and his parents wanted to go to a movie. And he told us, he's like, you know what, now I look back, like, I don't know, it might have been 30 years later, and he's like, I look back on that night and like I'm glad I went to the movie with my parents and I didn't go to the bar with my friends. And just little things like that. But I think what you're hitting at is so important. We can get stuck with like the sport or the task we're doing, but like what you're talking about is, what about their soul? What about their heart? And yeah, I'm thinking about uh I love Ray Lewis, like motivational videos and such. And he has this one video. It's like the Ravens, I think they lose in the playoffs. It's a very emotional locker room after the game. He's talking to Joe Flacco, and he's like, I'll try and do Ray Lewis impersonation.
Oh gosh.
He's like, Joe, you gotta lift up your head, man. There's a lot of pain outside these walls, Joe. But he's basically saying like, this is just a game. This is, like you said, this does not matter. This is a game. There's, and I think the NFL and all these professional sports, they're constantly like going to local hospitals. They see kids who have cancer, like, and he was basically just saying, look, we get to, for a living, go on a field and throw a ball around and like, get annihilated by Ray Lewis.
Ray Lewis was annihilating.
Yeah, watch out for Ray. But like, he just put it into perspective of like, this is just a game. And like, how often will we get caught up in whatever that task and whatever that job is or whatever we're doing. And yeah, it's really good to just have that like zoomed out perspective of like, how important truly is this?
I think that's a good place to call it.
Yay. The monkey is clapping.
Thank you guys for joining. Today was deep and heavy. And again, hope that anyone listening can filter through what is our opinions and what is true. Hang on to the truth. You can let go of our opinions. There's no offense. And yeah, challenge us. Like we said, ask questions. I want to know how I can grow. I know Brady does too.
Yeah. And I also want to say, just like, not like a disclaimer, but I think it is easier to give the grace, in a conversation like this. Even like, I would much rather sometimes, like, it's not my inclination to share the truth. It can be uncomfortable and it can be hard, but again, and like Dom said, you filter through like God knows my heart in it, and my heart is to get closer to God. My heart is for others to get closer to God. And I would just hate for someone to go through their whole life and not get like get what these stories are actually saying. So like, I think the best thing that could come from all this, if you're like, you have opinions or you're upset with anything me or Dom said tonight, like open this book up, like read the word for yourself and see what God says about certain things, and then come to God with it and hash that out. And it's a beautiful experience when you do that. So um yeah,
Peace.
thank y'all.